Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And we're going to rant about Rancid today. But first, old Silky's going to pimp the
Yeah.
website.
Hey, everybody. So get online, snagsandsilky.com. Check out the Click Pit. Check out different bands and books and movies, things you may not have heard of. You can catch all of our shows in there, see what playlists we've tagged on to different shows, and buy some merch, buy some mugs and things like that. Father's Day is around the corner next June, and Christmas before that. A lot of time to purchase things. So
Yeah,
anyway, so
there you
let's
have it.
drop that time bomb. Let's get it.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Tonight, Snags and old Silky are going to be talking about Rancid, and both of our minds, probably the best punk band of the last few decades. I
Well,
want to
the
kind of.
newer punk, I'm nothing touches the Ramones and shit like that, but
They're not of the
Rancid
last few decades. Rancid is,
definitely.
yeah. The best punk band of the last few decades is Rancid, without a doubt.
Not forget it's 2024.
Yeah, time flies.
It's always the late 90s for me, but
Yeah. And we're coming. You cats know us. We're coming from this perspective of we listen to everything, right? We listen to jazz, bluegrass, hair metal, whatever, classic punk, classic rock and roll, country music. So we have a certain familiarity with Rancid, but I do want to say for those of you cats who really want to dig deep into the and maybe you're one of those guys who's just always been into the whole 90s California punk scene, all the Epitaph bands and all the lookout bands and all the bands on Hellcat.
yeah.
There's a great video on YouTube. It's called A Radical Retrospective of Rancid. And it's one of those kids that grew up in that scene or near that scene and basically does a really thorough kind of overview for all the geeks out there that are going to be like, oh, you got that detail wrong. Well, go watch that video. It's really good. We'll link it in the click pit.
Yeah, it
But
was
this is
I
going to,
watched that today. Good
yeah,
stuff.
this is going to be Snags and Silky, just rapping about what we appreciate about Rancid and what we know about their history. So, uh, that introduction aside, basically, the two main cats who formed Rancid are Matt Freeman and Tim Armstrong, and they were friends since childhood. Grew up in Albany, California, and somewhere along the way, Tim's older brother, he's like 7 years older than him, gets into punk rock and starts introducing him to all these bands.
Oh, that's badass.
And Tim goes to his friend at school and is like, you got to listen to all these bands. And he gets Matt Freeman into it. And that's kind of the genesis of what motivated them to eventually form their first band, which is actually a very successful band on Lookout Records. Came out of that whole scene, called Operation Ivy, which is more of ska punk, straight up ska punk.
Yeah, I've heard them. I've got something by them on a compilation thing. I don't remember what it was though.
Their one album they did is on Spotify and definitely worth listening to. I mean, it's Tim Armstrong's songwriting,
Mm-hmm.
and as you'll see as we discuss this cat throughout the show, I mean, they got one band isn't enough for the guy. He's got plenty of side projects. The guy just, like, some people shit and piss every day. This guy shits and pisses really good songs every day. It's like he just can't help it.
Is right and full. Yeah.
So Operation Ivy is together from 87 to 89. They got due to this great songwriting and great sound they had, they're getting a lot of attention. They get major labels wanting to sign them, and the Gilman Street scene that they were part of, that Lookout Records was founded around, was basically, it was a real hardcore DIY scene, and I think it was DIY.
Do it yourself.
Yeah, I got to stop smoking weed before the shows. But and it's basically modeled on the whole Fugazi minor threat scene out of DC. That was just this hardcore, do it yourself. We're gonna start our own record label. We're gonna do everything ourselves. And Fugazi was notorious when the grunge and alternative thing blew up in the early '90s. So many major labels tried to sign them, and they didn't budge. They never did it. They never jumped on the bandwagon and made all the.
They had a good buzz though. When I was at Tower early '90s, a lot of Fugazi was played. But one thing that appealed to me with all of the punk stuff is that DIY kind of vibe. You're very creative at 18 and 19, and if somebody can draw something and you can print up poster, everyone's doing something. And it always appealed to me, these little 45s and 500 print vinyl. It awakened the collector in you. Just word of mouth. Somebody, hey, have you heard this one? And check this guy out. Bands like the Misfits, they were all DIY.
Yeah, I saw Fugazi on their last tour. It was a pretty good show, but this scene was obviously kind of modeled after that. And I think SST had a hand in starting that too. Basically, before, in the '70s, punk bands, their goal was to get signed,
right?
And they would play in these clubs, and then Sex Pistols get signed, the Ramones get signed. But starting with Fugazi and with SST on the West Coast, Fugazi was in DC. There's this whole do-it-yourself approach. People starting their own labels, and that became the way to do it, and not to be a sellout and all that stuff. So the reason I'm giving the backstory is because in Operation Ivy just really blows up. Like, people are going nuts over them, and all these major labels are trying to sign them. And they just weren't ready for it. They weren't sure they wanted to do all that. It was getting too big too quickly, and the band broke up.
Right.
So Tim Armstrong spirals into like a depression after that. Oh, here comes El Condor.
Uh-oh. El Condor.
El Condor has an announcement for the masses.
What's happening, man?
Merch. We got mugs. We got t-shirts. We may have Funko Pops coming up soon. We don't know. We got pajamas, probably.
Pajamas.
Sweaters.
Nice.
Stickers. Mugs.
Whatever. Just
whatever you say. Maybe we have a deal with Lego coming out sometime soon.
Hey.
We're going to put you in charge of the business side of things.
Yeah,
I think.
Lego,
He's got
Snags
ideas.
and Silky.
Yeah.
Who would have
thought?
thought?
That would be great.
There he goes.
Yeah.
All right.
Website.
Website.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Magically appear here.
All right. To the basement with you.
Our official spokesman, El Condor.
Yeah. Never know he's going to come in.
Yeah, that's what makes it. That's what makes it interesting. So Tim Armstrong just spirals into a depression after Operation Ivy breaks up. His father was a alcoholic, struggled with alcoholism, and he kind of inherited that habit.
Right. Sure.
And
haven't we all?
Really, well, he was drinking 20 beers a day.
Oh.
That's,
I
remember I used to be in this hooligan group with a local Atlanta soccer team back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And and there was a dude in there who was a recovering alcoholic, and I remember talking to him and just about it, and I was like, you see, you just don't think you could ever drink again. And he goes, well, last time I drank again, he was sober for like 2 years, had one sip of alcohol, and then it ended up downing like 2 bottles of Jack Daniels within the next hour. And I was like, yeah, you probably should never drink again. So,
and you can criticize that.
Oh, I'm not criticizing it at all.
No, but I mean, some people are like, good God, it's one drink, but you don't know the demon that's awakened. To me, it's more important to have a kid and a wife and somebody to come home to than all the alcohol that I think about all day.
Right? Yeah.
And I will drink. I'm not like on the wagon or anything, but it's more important to
you have to have your priorities. Alcohol has to have its priority in your life, and if it takes first priority, you got to stop drinking. So he actually decided to get sober, and was with the help of the Salvation Army. I think they had a program or something. That's what the song Salvation is about. There's an interesting video we'll also link on the Click Pit. Silky, I didn't have time to tell you about this one because I was just listening to it on the way home. It's called Tim Armstrong's Journey.
Okay.
And it's very amateurish in the way it's put together. The narrator just sounds kind of amateur, but it's so thorough. He takes he just goes through Tim Armstrong's life, and as he's talking about each moment in Tim's life, he starts playing excerpts from his songs, and you're like, oh, well, that song was obviously about that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. I mean, I remember I was on some Reddit thread a couple of years ago, and I was asking, it was a Rancid Reddit thread, and I was asking, are there any books about Rancid? And someone was like, just listen to the lyrics.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the book. And at the time I was like, I thought that sounded a bit pretentious, but watching this Tim Armstrong's Journey video that I'm going to drop in the Click Pit, every song is about some stage of his life. And you listen to the lyric. He lived on Telegraph Avenue.
Yeah, they've got like 26 videos over the career. They have a lot of videos, and they're great to watch. Just them performing.
Yeah, they direct. It's either Matt or Tim that directs them too. They direct their own videos, and they film them for like $5 or whatever. Most of them, but they're really good. They do them on a budget.
I mean, you can fall down a wormhole on YouTube. I watched a bunch of their videos today. It was just very entertaining.
Right.
Brings back a lot of memories. Early 90s when my first introduction to Rancid was in 94. Punk-A-Rama Volume 1 collection. It had I Wanna Riot and one other song. I think it was Hyena, if I'm not mistaken, but that had a bunch of different bands on it. NoFX, Offspring, Pennywise, 10-Foot Pole, a lot of good LA and that area punk.
My girlfriend at the time back then had a brother who was in a local hardcore band, and their idols were Pennywise.
Okay.
They wanted to be Pennywise. I forget what they were called. They were actually really good. We went and saw them a couple times.
Yeah, I caught Pennywise in a small club outside of Ventura in like 2000.
Oh, when you were living out there?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was just so, like, you're out there. You forget who what's around, and these people we were with, like, dude, Pennywise is playing. I'm like, oh my God. I had forgot about them, and they were still banging around.
So basically, Matt and Tim's brother sit him down, and they're like, you got to get sober. So he gets into the Salvation Army program, and gets sober. And Matt's like, "We got to keep you busy. Let's start another band." And they had a couple false starts. They started a ska punk band called Downfall that only lasted a few months. They started
They had a song "Long Way to Go." I'd like to track that down.
Downfall did?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's like their one song. I think it's on a comp.
They actually started the band Dance Hall Crashers and
Yeah.
didn't stay in that band, but that band went on without them.
Yeah.
So they ended up forming Rancid, and at the time, Rancid was a trio. It was the legendary Matt Freeman on bass, one of the most amazing bass players I've ever heard in my fucking life.
Yeah.
And then the genius songwriter Tim Armstrong, guitar and vocals, and then Brett Reed, who's Armstrong's roommate at the time, on drums. And so it was basically a trio. They started performing at 924 Gilman Street was the club that whole scene was based around, and then just around the Berkeley area. The Gilman Street scene label Lookout Records, they released an EP on there, and it was just called they have 3 releases that are just called Rancid. They have 1 EP called Rancid and 2 albums called Rancid.
Right.
And just keep you on your toes there. And that EP was hugely popular. And then they decided that they're going to do a full-length album, and they ended up switching over to Epitaph Records, which was Brett Gerwitz's label from Bad Religion. And the funny thing is, even at this early stage, them leaving Lookout to go to Epitaph, which is just basically a slightly bigger California indie punk label,
right?
People were saying they sold out.
That's hilarious.
Oh man, you left our little label.
Pirates Press is another label that had a lot of punk shit on it, similar to Epitaph.
Old Silky worked at Tower Records while all this shit was going on. So, so basically, they record the album with Brett Gerwitz producing, and contrary to everybody's claims, they didn't end up sounding just like Bad Religion. They sounded like Rancid again on their full-length album Rancid that was released through Epitaph in 1993. And that's that EP and that full-length first album Rancid are the only 2 without Lars Fredriksson on the
the Bottle album, if you want to call it that. Great, and that just got released on streaming again.
Well, the EP did. The EP just got dropped on Spotify.
Yeah.
And so they one thing, so they're still a trio, but as they're promoting that album, they're thinking, we could use another guitar player. So the first guitar player that they got in the band was Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. And
he almost joined the band.
He played 1 gig with them, and he co-wrote the song Radio, which we're gonna call this episode "When I Got the Music, I Got a Place to Go." Just that's always been my favorite Rancid lyric, and
that's a great lyric.
It's kind of funny if Billy Joe Armstrong came up with that lyric, because I really don't like Green Day very much.
Yeah.
But I love the song and I love that lyric. It's because it's so true,
Yeah.
As Monty Python said in their song, "Life's a piece of shit when you think of it." Yeah. But you always got music,
Yeah. That's on Fat Records, Radio. Just so you know, I looked it up because it's not streaming. $10 on eBay.
What are you talking about?
Radio, the EP.
Okay. I was just talking about the song
Yeah.
Radio. Yeah.
But the EP, it's $10 on eBay. Amazon has it like
Is this
over $100.
is this the
Fucking
split with no effects? The split.
no. The EP they did, Radio,
Okay.
1993.
The EP they did in 1991. No, okay. I wasn't aware there was another EP, so I thought it was just
Yeah, they had
EP
two.
and then Rancid, the full length album. But anyways, so they recruit. So basically, Billy Joe Armstrong, you know, Green Day's freaking taking off. He's not gonna stick around.
Yeah.
It's like when I saw Dave Grohl drumming with Queens of the Stone Age at the Cotton Club in the early 2000s. Rated R had just come out. Great album, Queens of the Stone Age album. And Dave Grohl played on it, and he played a few shows with them. And I actually saw one of those shows.
That's cool.
But he wasn't going to stick around and, you know, come on.
No, he's got to run his own band.
Yeah, and same thing with Billy Joe Armstrong, you know, and I don't really like either of those bands. I'd prefer Queens of the Stone Age and Rancid myself. But anyways, so they get Lars Frederiksen. He had been touring with UK Subs, and initially they approached him and he turned them down, and then he changed his mind smartly because, you know, you're kind of a side man with UK Subs, and you got this band that's on the rise. You could really make your mark in it.
Yeah, it's like when Brad Gillis went back to Night Ranger. Really?
No, it's not. It's not anything like that.
You know, he could have stayed with Ozzy, but he's got to get
goes back to Night Ranger. Yeah,
his people. Yeah,
right. We're not allowed to mention Night Ranger
ever again.
Yeah. All right, so so they work on and release their second studio album, Let's Go. It's the first one with Lars on it. They supported Offspring on the 1994 tour. Offspring was huge. The funny thing is, like, for me, I didn't really get into Rancid until a lot later. I was probably 2010, right after Let the Dominoes Fall came out. And there was, you know, I don't know if you guys remember that streaming platform, Rhapsody. It was one of the early ones.
Yeah.
And I was just, you know, thrilled I didn't have to pay $10 for every record that I wanted to listen to, and just was listening to everything. And I was like, and I remember hearing about Rancid, and you'd hear Offspring and Green Day all over the radio. I never really liked either of them. They were just too pop. It wasn't, to me, punk rock was the shit that I grew up listening to, was the Misfits and Bad Brains and Black Flag and
UK Subs and shit like
all that shit. And this stuff just seemed like
people, because you had the underground guys, you know, Pennywise and Rancid, really. Green Day got a shit ton of money, and Offspring, and they're all tatted up, Blink 182. They look punk, but then they're up there playing pop music.
Yeah. And it just
the
never,
label's like, yeah, that's not what, this is what you're going to do.
It never appealed to me, but I remember when this, you know, this tour they're opening for Offspring 1994, I remember that when all that shit blew up. And it's funny because if I'd have just gone a step, I just wrote off that whole scene because I was like, oh, that's just pop music. If I'd have looked into it just a little bit further, you know, I would have loved fucking Rancid back then. But
yeah, that Punk-O-Rama album, if you can find that, Volume 1, is just really, really good time capsule. And that I Want to Riot song is just still one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, they just got so many good songs.
Yeah, they do.
We decided not to do the track-by-track analysis on this episode because it just take fucking forever.
Too much. Every album has like 25 songs on it.
Yeah, right.
Jesus Christ.
So, again, now they're finding themselves back in the situation they were in with Operation Ivy, where all these major labels are are just
Knocking at the
begging
door.
them to sign. One of those major labels, Madonna had a label in the 90s. She signed Deftones to it and a bunch of other people called Maverick Records.
Oh yeah.
And it was backed by all the major. It was a major label. I'm not sure who else was involved with it, but
Yeah,
it was.
they were on Sony, I believe.
Yeah, it was big money, and she part of her effort to get them on the get them signed. She sent them a nude picture, and this is for you kids listening now. This is back when Madonna was good looking and young.
That's crazy.
She sent them a nude picture. Yeah, come and sign my life, but it didn't work. So apparently somebody from Epic, this is a rumor, somebody from Epic Records is trying to sign them, and they tell him, well, if you and he's just some regular looking businessman dude, and they're like, if you shave the sides of your head, leave a mohawk and dye it blue, we'll sign with Epic. And he did, and they still didn't sign.
Oh wow.
Fucking
That's
hilarious.
Weird.
So you got anything else to say about this before we talk about Out Come the Wolves?
Let's Go is a great record. I with each thing that Rancid has done, they've just gotten better with each album. Their entire run, there's no cutoff. They're still true to who they are.
Yeah. They flirted with selling out a little bit when the Indestructible album and the video. We can talk about that when we get there, but just a little bit. And then they backed off and recorded what is my favorite album after that, Let the Dominoes Fall. Just a brilliant album.
But I love it. Out Come the Wolves. They brought the ska back in.
Yeah.
Jerry Finn produced.
Yeah, Brett Gurewitz produced a lot of their stuff, but they would mix it up every now and then. Out Come the Wolves is their most successful album, and rightfully so, not because they recorded some pop ballad like Bon Jovi or something. Right. It's their most successful album because it's just not back-to-back brilliant songs.
And it's the timing. 1995, this just... there, you had your different bands. Beastie Boys were running hard. People still could talk about Red Hot Chili Peppers without vomiting in their mouth. All these bands were in full bore, but there was space for a band like Rancid to put out this brilliant.
There was a big void for brilliant punk songwriting after Courtney Love had Kurt Cobain killed so she could keep his money.
Well, his last words were, "Hole's gonna be big."
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. So, basically, so they filled that void, but it was also kind of a slightly younger generation. It's just a few more, not generation, but a slightly different audience too,
Mm-hmm.
And, just amazing songs. Roots Radicals, Time Bomb, Ruby Soho. It's just we're not gonna go talk about every track, but we could, and we'd be raving. I've got my Rancid playlist. It's just everything they've done, and since 2010, I'll listen to them I'll probably play that whole playlist through about once every 2 months.
Yeah.
For the last 14 years. It's just so fucking, and it never gets old.
No.
We've got a good playlist, which is basically everything Rancid that's on Spotify.
Yeah, with the first EP, which has only recently been put back on.
And that's called Battering Ram. And then we put together a playlist of all the Tim Time Bomb stuff because Tim Armstrong, he's got with his backing band, the Interrupters, calls himself Tim Time Bomb, and released a ton of songs, a lot of covers and some originals that just don't make it onto Rancid albums,
Right.
and some
Really
and
good
some
laid back ska shit. I was
yeah,
very impressed with it.
and some a few Rancid songs. It's just his
Reworked.
solo versions of those,
Yeah.
and 9 hours long or something. That one's called Just for Tonight, and so
That
we
was
got
kind
this.
of a dig at today, but
Yeah,
uh,
but
he also recorded Larry's Dead, the 7-minute little film
yeah,
in '95.
he's directed a few short films as well, and
Yeah.
the other thing is, and this is later on in the timeline, but since we're talking about it, he actually was on the X-Files as an actor. It was
Yeah.
like one or two.
2016.
Yeah. So
Back when I marathoned all the X-File shows and movies and everything, I saw that one.
I tried to do that, and I couldn't get through the first episode. Maybe I got to give it a few
Of
episodes.
X-Files?
Yeah, is it worth it?
Yeah, dude. Holy fuck.
Nah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
first episode of any show is gonna be a
Yeah, it just
stretch,
seems so 90s. I was like, where's my widescreen, man? Where's
Yeah.
Um,
She, Scully's got it's similar in some aspect of, like, if you go back and try to watch Moonlighting,
oh
you're
right,
put off by the fashion. You're just like, oh god.
and the TV framing, the little square
The
fucking
4
frame.
by 5, yeah.
4x3 or whatever it is.
Yeah. But X-Files is just great sci-fi and spooky shit. It is basically an updated version of the Night Stalker.
Yeah. Well, I totally when you and I were binging the Night Stalker and texting each other about it, I was like, this is total what the X-Files has just ripped this shit off.
And so what you'll get is the X-Files. There's Hunt Down the Monster episodes, but then there's the government's
conspiracy.
bad conspiracy shows. Those get a little tedious, but what I like is the bad guy smokes. It's just humorous to me. So
yeah. So, anyways, I'll binge all those, and then we'll do an X-Files episode at some point.
Yeah.
But anyway,
'97 they did the Hellcat Records. They started that.
Well, let's finish talking about And Out Come the Wolves just a little bit.
Okay.
So this is a huge record for them, giant breakout. Reaches number 45 on the Billboard chart, certified gold. Like just a few months. It's released in August, and by of '95, by January of '96, it's already gold. It's multi-platinum at this point, and actually started earning them some really good the heaviest airplay that they've had to this point. They play Roots Radicals and Ruby Soho on Saturday Night Live. So once you're playing Saturday Night Live, you're
oh yeah. Even if no one's heard you until that night on that show, you're selling records the next day.
Yeah. All right. 97. The Warped Tour. I want to talk about the Warped Tour. It's more like 2001. Let's talk about Life Won't Wait a little bit, if you don't mind. That's what came next. So they do 2 years of touring for And Out Come the Wolves. Life Won't Wait comes out. This one, they're bringing back
Buju Banton on it.
Yeah, they're collaborating with reggae artists. They're bringing back a lot of the ska and the reggae and some dub. It's a lot. Yeah, I really like that album too. I love their ska dub reggae side. The interesting thing for me when I first started listening to them 14 years ago was they really reminded me of the Clash, because the Clash was really they were one of the first bands to really popularize this mix of punk rock and reggae. And so I was, and Joe Strummer's got a rough voice. It's similar in texture to Tim Armstrong. This, and I just, for me, and a lot of their imagery is similar to what you'd see on the club, black and white photos that look like a Xerox, and that kind of
That's what I
imagery.
love about their album covers. They really jump out.
Yeah.
Almost as hand drawn.
It's very
vibrant.
similar to the Clash's visual aesthetic. So I always felt like they were really influenced by the Clash, but digging into their background and their history and watching interviews and all of that stuff. And even if you look at all the songs he covers with the Tim Time Bomb project, I don't hear the Clash mentioned very much.
No,
and they don't.
I don't
He
either,
covers like a few Ramones songs in there.
Yeah,
and when
I
the Ramones,
always think of the Clash though.
Yeah, they really to me. It's like, what if the Clash was had more stable personalities and kept it together for longer? What if the Clash stayed together for 30 years
and channeled that first album?
Well, yeah, up to London Calling with the rockabilly and the reggae stuff. I mean, all of that stuff is in Rancid's DNA.
Yeah, they're all punk ingredients for sure.
Yeah, but you don't have to wonder about that because you've got Rancid. But it's interesting not to hear them talk. They talk about a lot of bands, a lot of street punk bands that influence them, GBH and MDC and UK Subs and all that stuff. But it's interesting to me not to see he's not covering Clash songs, or as a band they don't. So it was interesting to see that preconception of mine kind of.
Well, and Matt Freeman was in MDC briefly.
Yeah, he was. He played with them after Operation Ivy when Tim Armstrong was laying on the floor, blitzed out of his mind. So anyways, but Life Won't Wait starts getting them compared to the Clash more. The media was, some people were comparing Life Won't Wait to Sandinista. I think Life Won't Wait is a better album than Sandinista. Sandinista has some brilliant stuff, but it's more sprawling and kind of not as focused.
It's not as focused, but there's the balls to put that out.
And it's got some great songs. It's just, should have been a single album, or maybe, put
too many bands will just put it all out, some giant thing, and you really got
that was their Use Your Illusion.
Oh my God.
Too much, man. We don't need all
much better though than Use Your Illusion.
Oh yeah, I know that's just an analogy, not a comparison.
They also did Brad Logan on South Park. That's a episode.
Yeah,
Rancid was on South Park.
Yeah. So they're permeating the mainstream culture by this point. After Life Won't Wait, Tim starts his own label, which is basically an imprint on Epitaph called Hellcat. And the next, so they just did this really eclectic album with Life Won't Wait, with all the dub and the reggae and some rockabilly type stuff. And in August 1st of 2000, they released the second self-titled album, their third release, if you include the EP that's just called Rancid, and it's just straight up hardcore.
Yeah.
So they're basically, just, you would think after Life Won't Wait, they're permeating the mainstream, really relaxing their musical style, that the next step would be something like Indestructible, which did come. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Something mainstream, but no, they go back and do a fucking Agnostic Front album,
Right.
So
they also, that same year, they did this BYO split series, volume 3 with NoFX, where they cover 6 NoFX songs. NoFX covers 6
Rancid songs. Yeah, and I haven't heard that one. That's not on streaming.
It's really good, and it sucks that that's not on stream. That was the first thing I went to look for. I've
you're
got
making the
this
playlist.
CD somewhere buried.
Yeah.
But if you can find it, that and that Radio EP, those are just so fun to rock. They're great shit.
Bet they're probably on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure. I would bet.
I'll scan YouTube. If we find them, we'll put them in the clip.
Yes, yeah, Bio Split Series Volume 3 with no effects.
Yeah.
Should be able to find that.
So let's see here. Yeah, so actually the Rancid 2000 album, it hits number 68 on the Billboard charts. Less successful than the previous 3 albums, obviously, because they're just going back to straight up hardcore punk.
I like that one for the energy. It's just so raw.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cat who made that video that basically it's just a Rancid encyclopedia from the perspective of someone who was in that scene that we're going to link in the clickbait. He calls himself the punk rock historian. Great YouTube channel, by the way.
Yeah, he's got some good. I checked out some of his other episodes. Yeah. He's very knowledgeable.
That he said this one is his favorite album, 2000 Rancid hardcore album. So everybody's kind of got their favorite. That's the cool thing about Rancid. They're a little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah, the Wolves one for me. That's
How Come the Wolves? Yeah, that's a lot of people's favorite. It's a great fucking album. As you mentioned, they did the Vans Warped tour. This was 2001. Good time to do that. Having just dropped this hardcore album, they can go out there and just rock everybody's faces off.
Yeah, but you also had Stained and Limp Bizkit all jumping on the Warped tour.
Yeah. And I would hate to have to sit through Limp Bizkit. Well, I guess that's when you go buy the T-shirts and shit.
See, I went because it was another good live show. You catch some obscure bands. I saw that Warped tour out in California in 2000, and there was like a ton of secondary stages, so you could go up and see whoever small stage, and then watch 5, 6, 7 songs and then go wander off, so that was a good time. But then you had a ton of people there that you could almost call posers, because it's almost like people that go to church where they go and they're looking around to see who sees them there.
Right.
But they're not really getting the message or give to,
their dad got tickets.
Yeah.
From his company
and they buy their first Ramones t-shirt and they think, oh man, I am so punk.
Yeah.
And, you and I grew up on the streets.
Well, we were raised by hippies, so we already had a natural appreciation for the punk aesthetic because we were raised by fucking hippies, and it was a disaster. So
I watched Repo Man, and that's my childhood. Like God.
So kids, back in the old days, punks hated hippies. It's not like now where punks are hippies and they're preaching at you about everything hippies used to preach at you about.
Yeah.
Back in the old days,
like Eddie Vedder.
I remember Charles Bukowski was he was interviewed. I read about this somewhere. He was interviewed by a punk rock magazine in like the early 80s. And he was talking about it, and he said, yeah, the guy that was interviewing me said he loves pollution. I thought that was hilarious. You never hear a current day punk be nihilistic like that and say they love pollution.
Yeah, you just say whatever and let people get on.
The nihilism of old school punk rock is sadly missed, in my opinion, because it required a certain sense of humor and a not giving a fuck what other people think.
Right. And
which
if you're
do not
be that uptight about it, then good.
Yeah. You do not see in modern day quote unquote punk rock. Modern day quote unquote punk rock a lot of the time is politically correct vegans, monitoring each other on social media to make sure nobody has any independent thoughts.
Right. And
which is
if
not
you
punk rock.
if you don't agree with what I'm saying, then you're a racist, and
Then
on and on.
you're evil, right?
You go back to the Ramones. I'm against it, and they just everything. I'm against it. It's fucking so good.
That sums it up. That was the attitude that damn kids these days, they just don't get it. But anyways, so they released that album. It's they do the Vans Warped tour. After that, there's a side project because, Matt and Tim can't take enough time off to just relax. They got to do even more music, so they start a band called Devil's Brigade, and it's just more Tim Armstrong. It's heavy, harder rockabilly kind of sound. More Tim Armstrong songwriting for you. They did this split with No Effects, like you mentioned. And then they go into the studio. An interesting thing happens here. Warner Brothers approaches them and says, "Hey, psst, come over here real quick. Hey, man, nobody will know. We're not going to put the logo on your record anywhere. It'll still say Epitaph, Hellcat, and all that. But we're going to distribute the album, and we're going to give you a shitload of money to do that. What do you say?" And they made the deal, and they go in and record an album called Indestructible, which is so markedly different from the previous album, Back to Hardcore album, that I initially, when I first started getting into them in around 2010, I left this album off my Rancid playlist.
Oh, wow.
I had everything except for Indestructible because it was too polished. Now, at this point, I'm not as uptight about that kind of stuff. If I understand where somebody's coming from, I'm not as judgmental about that. And now it's on my Rancid playlist, and when I'm playing all the Rancid stuff, it just fits right in there. It's still really good songwriting, but the production is a little more polished. The vocals are a little less gravelly. The guitars can be a little less distorted. The pace of the songs can be a little slower. And those are all generalities. I mean, there's a variety of different songs on there. It's still produced by Brett Gurewitz from Bad Religion.
Yeah.
But, you get Warner Brothers money in there, and then you get a more poppy sounding album. And it actually...
it's also in a different studio, so, it may come off sounding a little more polished. Certain things, I can't put a tangible stamp on what it is I don't like, but when I hear it, I go, I can't. Like, I can't stop right there,
Right.
But I can't say, oh, that's polished, that's poor songwriting. It just, whatever it is, as soon as I hear it, the little guy in my head goes, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And we have to maintain our integrity.
Oh, fuck yeah.
You cannot stray from who you are. So,
anyways, so there was, obviously, even though the Warner Brothers logo wasn't on the album, word got out about the distribution deal. There was a lot of backlash from the fans. And then they do a music video featuring them hanging out with Good Charlotte and Kelly Osbourne, which didn't help matters much.
God. Wow.
So it was basically that they were flirting with selling out a little bit, but it's Tim Armstrong songwriting. And now when I'm doing my marathon, it doesn't pop out to me at all. It's just more Rancid, and
it's all fine. Worked in. The thing is, a lot of these bands, Indestructible to me is kind of similar to Suicidal Tendencies, where whatever album you're talking about with Suicidal, that's what they sound like right then. That's what they're doing, and it all fits in like a puzzle piece with everything else. They're just another solid band.
Oh yeah, there's really not any bad Rancid songs, and they've
No.
even though they kind of they've been to the edge, they stood there and looked down, but they didn't jump into the commercial cesspool. They backed off, and again, there was a little bit of a hiatus, and we'll talk about that before we get to it. But then they recorded my favorite Rancid album right after that, "Let the Dominoes Fall." So
2009.
yeah.
Before that, they did
Before
a
that, there's more
collection,
stuff.
B-sides and C-sides, which really kind of catches you up with a lot of things that were non-album.
Yeah, and I can't remember if that one is on. It used to be on Spotify, or maybe it was
Yeah,
on
it
Rhapsody.
is.
It
I
is okay.
included it
Good,
in
good.
the
Um,
playlist.
yeah. So basically they take a hiatus after Indestructible. Um, uh, worked after the Indestructible tour, and worked on side projects. Tim Armstrong has a side project called the Transplants with the cat from Blink 182,
Oh,
but it's actually, I guess that guy's taking a break from recording crap for the
well,
corporations
Blink
because
182 had one song that I didn't mind,
right.
and the look when I saw them, I'm like, oh, I got to check these guys out, and it's
Yeah.
just, it's like the
I've just
Bay City Rollers, and
I
we're
smelled the
so
stink
punk.
far enough away that I just never
God,
went
yeah.
down
Well, I
that
mean,
road.
for me, I had access to it without spending any money, so it
Yeah,
was
it's
I
back in
could
the
check
day.
it out. But God, I don't understand. It's like somebody telling me they don't like the Beatles. I just
Yeah.
go, what? I
But
like Blink 182. What?
Transplants is it's got a little bit of a hip hop side to it with the rhythm and all that, but it's
Mhm.
just Tim Armstrong songwriting. I've heard excerpts here and there. I haven't marathoned all that stuff. There's a clip somewhere where a Snoop Dogg gets on stage with them, and so there's this kind of hip hop
Nice.
side of it. Anyways,
Well, when you got Snoop, that gives you a stamp with that
oh,
whole
that's
crowd.
that's the stamp of approval
Okay.
right there. He releases a
Diamond
solo
Dogs.
album in May 2007 called "A Poet's Life." I have not heard that. Have you heard that?
What year?
Tim Armstrong. It's not the Tim Time Bomb stuff. It's just Tim
Yeah,
Armstrong's solo album called "A Poet's Life" in May
I have
2007.
not heard that.
Yeah. To track that down. I think I've looked for that on on Spotify. I'm not sure if it's on there or not.
The song that I need to find 2012 is they put it out. It's called "Fuck You,"
Yeah,
and
they dropped a song called "Fuck You" at yeah.
I would
That
like
was
to hear
after
that.
"Let the Dominoes Fall."
Yeah.
Um, but before "Let the Dominoes Fall," Lars Fredrikson's playing with Lars Fredriksson and the Bastards. Now that's good stuff. I've listened to all of that, and
Right.
that's just straight up balls out punk rock as you would expect with Lars Fredriksson. Good stuff. Um, um, Matt Freeman toured with Social Distortion for a little bit. Had a couple kids. Lars had a kid, so they were, fucking and trucking during that break there.
That's great.
Yeah. And then get back together in 2006 and play some acoustic performances. Let's see here. Rancid removed their self-titled EP from Lookout Records catalog. Not sure why that was. There's also a lineup change in 2006. Drummer Brett Reed leaves to basically settle down and have a family, and Brandon Steinekert, formerly of The Used, joins the band. Then this B-sides and C-sides compilation comes out to 2007. And then they're doing a lot of touring. Japan, Punk Spring Festival, a couple U.S. tours, They get an XM radio show for a while called Rancid Radio, 1 hour weekly show. Eventually gets canceled. So then they go, guess where they go to record Let the Dominoes Fall?
I could not tell you.
Skywalker Sound.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I knew
So
that.
George Lucas's sound studio. First album with Brandon Steinekert on drums. And oh wow, Booker T. Jones performs organ on one of those songs. That album is great. It's the excellent songwriting. I think it's their best songwriting since Out Come the Wolves. And the cool thing is, as a bonus, they re-record a lot of those songs acoustic, and they sound great acoustic. I don't know if my playlist is still like this, but I used to have it mixed. So you basically you'd hear the electric version of East Bay Nights, and then the acoustic version of East Bay Nights.
Right.
And wherever they did an acoustic version, I just stick it in the order of the album right after the original song.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a continuation of the song, but it's just a great album. I love all those songs. I love the acoustic versions they did. That's kind of the pusher, get a little taste of the drug way I got my wife listening to Rancid briefly. She never went down the rabbit hole like I did, but I played her the acoustic stuff off that album.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's pretty. So that one peaked at number 11 on Billboard. Pretty commercially successful. They performed Last One to Die on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. So, in the mainstream. Anything you want to say about that album?
No, you pretty much covered that one. Yeah, I just like their consistency. Even the videos are still good. They did not. I'm sure that they've got a nice fucking house. They've got nice cars. They don't have to want for anything, but they're able to be true to their roots and continue to consistently put out.
Let's name the few
solid
band. Let's name the few bands that have been able to do that. You can count them on one hand. AC/DC.
I'll say Motorhead, Ramones.
Ramones. Ramones got pretty squiggly with the trying to get on the radio for quite a while.
Now, see, I would never say this, but you could almost say it's similar to how the Grateful Dead would put out albums, but then you went and saw them live. So the Ramones were a live band.
Oh, I know. Yeah, live. They never sucked.
Solid,
Right. The Ramones. I love the Ramones, and I've marathoned the Ramones. But there are points in that marathon, and I've got my playlist has every Ramones song. We talked about this on the Ramones episode.
Yeah.
But there are points in that where I'm just like, stop trying to get on the radio. Beat on the brat some more.
The DLR Van Halen albums, those are all spotless to me.
Yeah.
Although to me, 1984 is subpar to the rest of the albums.
Right. So we'll leave the Ramones in there because they've earned it. But AC/DC, Motorhead, Ramones, Van Halen, the real Van Halen, not the
you used to be able to say Iron Maiden, but then they did those two albums with somebody's drunk uncle,
Blaze Bailey. Yeah, we're being facetious here. There's a lot of bands out there that have kind of stayed true to their roots, but to get as big and popular as Rancid has gotten and still consistently put out good music is just, it's rare.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about Black Flag and stuff like that, but
they didn't last that. Yeah, that's true. But they didn't last that long. And honestly, the last couple albums, even though they didn't sell out, were just musically not as good.
Or the Melvins, there's
the Melvins, they've never sold out, but I think songwriting wise, and I love the weirdness of King Buzzo.
Oh, sure.
And I've seen them a couple times live. But songwriting wise, I mean,
Yeah,
It's
you
it's
either
a
have it
different
or you don't.
it's
I
a
mean,
different story.
some of these songs that people put together, you're just blown away by.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So,
yeah.
Honor Is All We Know gets dropped in 2011. They do a small tour supporting Blink 182. Um, uh, and then they go in the studio. They record "Honor Is All We Know." They had
2014.
yeah, they headlined the they headlined the. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm wrong. My notes are fucked up here. They headlined the Gros Rock Festival in Belgium. Um, and then they played with Coxbar. That would have been a great fucking show.
Oh my God, yeah,
And
yeah,
they did a split 7-inch with Coxbar on Pirates Press. The
yeah.
that those East Bay
Oh,
night.
there's Pirates Press, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Headlined the Rebellion Festival in Blackpool, England. Shared slots with Public Image Limited, Social Distortion, the Buzzcocks.
yeah, I like Social Distortion a lot.
Social Distortion's a good band, yeah.
Mike Ness has got some good solo stuff too.
Yep. And then that's when they dropped "Fuck You," first song in like 3 years. And that song is included in the "Oi, This Is Street Punk Volume 2"
Or if that's
compilation.
on Spotify.
I don't know. I guarantee you it's on YouTube though. I haven't looked, but I'm sure it is.
I just like to hear it,
Right. All right. So basically, in 2013, they start recording "Honor Is All We Know." I remember that was kind of the first album that came out after I got into them. Dropped in 2014. It's a good, solid album. I'd say these last 3 albums they're all good, solid Rancid albums. The songwriter East Bay, I think they're a step down a little bit in songwriting quality from "Let the Dominoes Fall" and "Out Come the Wolves" and all that stuff. But it's just good, solid Rancid. It's you can drop as we've talked about with AC/DC and Motorhead and any of these bands that have just gone on forever and kept releasing music that's true to themselves. You can drop the needle on any track on any album and you're going to be fine. You're not going to hit some washed up power ballad that you hate.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Even the Motorhead stuff, it might not be Ace of Spades, but it's fucking solid.
Yeah.
Nothing,
Yeah.
Nothing.
I sent you that meme a couple weeks ago. It said the 2 best bands in the world, and it was a picture of the first classic Motorhead lineup with Filthy and Fast Eddie, and then the second classic Motorhead lineup with Mickey D and Phil Campbell. So those are the 2 best bands in the world. They do so they tour "Honor Is All We Know." For let's see here, they do Lollapalooza in Brazil in 2017. At Lollapalooza in Brazil, speaking of Motorhead, Lars Frederiksen dedicates the last song to Lemmy from Motorhead, who had died at the end of 2015. So, Troublemaker and Tomorrow Never Comes come out
10th
after
album.
that. Yeah. Troublemaker in 2017. They do the Boston to Berkeley tour with the Dropkick Murphys. I really like.
That would have been good to see.
Yeah,
as well.
I got on a little Dropkick Murphys kick for a while. I really liked their stuff, but as you progress through their discography, to me, it gets more diluted. Like the early Dropkick Murphys stuff is great, kind of Irish punk mashup, traditional Irish music, spirited punk rock mashup, and then as you get later and later into their discography, it just starts getting diluted and more kind of slow songs and shit.
My ability to listen to music is really down to when I drive to work and drive home. So I'm almost very picky as who I put on.
Right.
anymore. Because it is cool to check out a new band. I'm always open for that. But some of these bands, I'm like, yeah, I don't need to hear them. I'll put the Ramones on,
Yeah.
or whatever.
So yeah, and then they do some tours. I'm just looking through these notes I have, and it's just more tours. Boston and Berkeley tour. Drop the 10th album. Tomorrow Never Comes on April.
Almost a James Bond title to me.
Yeah. Sounds like a James Bond title. June 2nd, 2023. And I remember listening to that. Another good, solid Rancid album. I listened to that. I think you told me when it was released and jumped on.
Yeah, it for some reason I get these emails and I'm like, oh shit. But
yeah, I'm on their email list too.
Videos, 2 EPs, 27 singles. There's just no end to their output.
Never ending amount of side projects, more songs on a side project. Yeah.
Brilliant writing, good energy. A lot of times, we talk about AC/DC or Motorhead. It's a brand name, and you reach up on the shelf and bring that down. You want it to taste like what you're used to. And so when Tomorrow Never Comes came out, I just had a smile on my face. I was like, thank you.
Yeah. More Rancid.
It sounds like Rancid.
Doesn't sound like the Black Album or Load or Reload. It
don't need.
Sounds like the band is supposed to sound like.
Right.
Yeah.
And now I back to Iron Maiden. Even their newest thing, it might not be as fast as I'm Running Free, but you can hear that it's Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And I am very supportive of them because of that. Rancid, just a ton of stuff.
It's Tim Armstrong is a fountain of songwriting genius. He's really, I think when it's all said and done, he'll be looked back upon in similar status as like definitely Joe Strummer and Mick Jones, but also probably like Dylan or Bob Marley. One of these people who just keeps dropping brilliant songs. Although Dylan hasn't dropped brilliant songs lately, but
no. But if there are still people listening to good music, I would hope that they do recognize Armstrong.
Yeah,
in the future,
brilliant songwriter. One thing I do want to mention, I was talking about when I was in that little hooligan group for the minor league soccer team here back in the day, and all that whole crew loved punk rock, and we were always talking about Rancid and all that shit. But Lars and Brandon are both soccer fans, so just if you're a soccer geek, this will be of interest to you, and then we'll wrap it up. Lars is a big supporter of San Jose Earthquakes and his hometown area, and then Millwall over in England. And the only reason I can think of he's a fan of Millwall over in London is because they're notoriously the most violent fan base in all of English soccer. So that's why Lars is a Millwall fan. It's got to be. And then Brandon is a fan of Real Salt Lake. You'll see Real Salt Lake flags up behind his drum set or stickers on his drum set, when they're playing live. So.
The other connection to Rancid that I have is when I worked at Tower Records, we had a rep that would come in, and his name was David Town, and he was stepfather to Brett Reed.
Oh, wow.
And he would always tell us to check out Rancid. And he was just so proud of them. And David Town was a really cool dude. And so that was always really cool to he would bring in promos of the new album or whatever. So it was always that's how I got that Punkorama Volume 1. He was like,
Right.
they're on this. Check this out, and so
Cool. Well, that's our thoughts and views on Rancid. We know that main reason you cats tune into this show is because you care what we think and you just want to hear us talk.
right.
So we
You're
talked about
somewhere
Rancid
in
enough.
your day-to-day, week in, week out. What is Snags and Silky gonna do this week?
Yeah. Hopefully our text convos with you and me and Rabid Mike, they're never made public. Just
No, but they think what am I not listening to? And they're gonna hook me up. They're gonna guide me.
Right.
And that's what we're here for, to guide you.
But if you're one of those cats that was in on the whole California punk scene from the 90s from the ground up, and you know it inside and out better than us, you're still entertained just listening to us ramble.
Right.
So that's why we got to do this stuff anyways.
Yeah. So any mistakes, just go pound sand.
Yeah, stick your head up your ass and squeeze your sphincter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's
it, kids.
Next week we got some more good shit for you. Peace out.
Rocking. Deuces.
Rocking those deuces.
That's it.